Dear students, hope you are safe and sound by the grace of Almighty. Due to COVID-19 pandemic all over the world, you are away from your educational institution and this hampers your academic progress. But online classes can help you to continue your study. As a part of that initiative, I am here with you today. This is Mohammad Mamun Sardar, Assistant Professor of English, Government Bruzoral College, Khulna. Today we will have a discussion on the poem Fern Hill, written by Dylan Thomas for the students of Honours first year. But before going through the poem, I would like to have a discussion on the life and works of the poet Dylan Thomas. To understand a poem, it is necessary to have information about the poet's life and works. Dylan Thomas is a famous English poet. He was born in the year 1914 and died in 1953. His full name is Dylan Marley Thomas. He is a great poet, short story writer, and playwright. Here you can see a picture of Dylan Thomas. Dylan Thomas was born at Swansea, a little town of South Wales. The poet passed a very happy childhood and he attended the local Swansea Grammar School where his father was a teacher. Since his childhood, Dylan Thomas was neurotic and sickly. He shied away from his school and preferred reading on his own. The poet in his childhood was not much interested in his school studies. Rather, he was interested in poetry. Dylan Thomas grew up in an atmosphere of war and the threat of further war. And during his lifetime, he saw industrial ugliness and mass employment. And these situations were familiar facts of his time. In 1934, Thomas moved from Swansea to London and he made many friends, most of whom were connected with literature. He also had the opportunity to publish his poems in magazine. The outbreak of the Second World War in 1939 filled Thomas with horror, and the war itself was a nightmare from which he never completely recovered. On the 21st February 1950, he visited America for the first time, and subsequently Thomas paid 3 more visits to America, meeting his death on the last of his visits. The last years of the poet were difficult ones. He was short of money and he could not enjoy good health. And on his 4th lecture tour to the USA, he died in New York City on the 9th November 1953, a few days after his 39th birthday. So we can see he died a premature death. His body was taken back to Loghorn, where he was buried to St. Martin's Churchyard. This is Dylan Thomas' life in short. And here we have some information about his writing. Childhood was one of the constant themes of Thomas's prose and poetry. Many times he recreated his own childhood joys where he spent his holidays and in his own home and that of his friend Daniel Jones. Dylan Thomas passed his childhood period, especially the summer vacation, in his aunt's farm, Fern Hill, and in 1933 his aunt Anne Jones died, and Dylan Thomas was greatly influenced by his region. 18 Poems was his first book. It was published in the year 1934 when he was only 20 years old. His poems are especially famous for the use of poetic diction and imagery, and his poems are sometimes obscure because they contain elements of surrealism and personal fantasy, and we also find these things in the present poem, Fern Hill. His language is fresh and vital and can draw the attention of the readers. Dear students, now we will go through the poem Fern Hill. The poem Fern Hill was first published in 1946 in the volume called Death and Entrances. This poem is about childhood pleasure and pains of losing childhood. This is an autobiographical poem. Here the poet narrates his childhood experience. In his childhood days, the poet used to visit Fern Hill. Fern Hill is the name of a farm belonged to the poet's aunt Anne Jones, as I have said you earlier. The poet visited his aunt's farm many times. He passed his summer holidays there. The boy was away from school and parental control. That's why he was able to enjoy immense pleasure during his stay there. The farm was like paradise to the boy. He used to have youthful fantasies there. Let us go through the poem. In this poem, we have 6 stanzas. In the first stanza of the poem, the poet introduces the main theme, his childhood pleasure, his life on the farm, playing different types of games and sports all day long, sleeping and dreaming at night under the stars. The boy used to lead carefree and happy life. Childhood period is full of innocence and unmixed pleasure. He used to move freely in the apple orchard. The house seemed to be full of music, and the boy was happy as the grass was green. This phrase, happy as the grass was green, indicates the intensity of his pleasure. The night was also beautiful and full of stars. The poet here gives utmost importance to the role of time. Time plays an important role in human life and controls our life. Time was in his favor. That's why he used to pass happy time during his childhood. When time favors us, we are able to pass joyous days. But when time is against us, we suffer. To the poet, his childhood period was the golden period of his life. He was loved and honored by everybody. Let's have a look at the second stanza of the poem. In the second stanza, we see that the happy days of the poet continue. He was green and carefree. Here, green symbolizes freshness and liveliness. The boy is seen playing in the happy earth. The poet says that childhood is the most glorious period in our life, and it comes once, only once in our life. He again puts emphasis on the role of time in human life. Time allowed him to play and be joyous. During his stay at Fern Hill, he used to play different roles like huntsman and herdsman. In this way, he was passing his childhood days. In the third stanza, we have more information about the poet's childhood activities and fantasy. His days were running very smoothly. At night, he used to have fancies. He thought that the farm was being carried away by owls and the horses were running out of the stables. In the fourth stanza, dawn comes and the child wakes in the morning. The farm, white with dew, looks like paradise. The phrase Adam and maiden alludes to the freshness of heaven. It was as fresh as the first day of the universe. In the fifth stanza, the poet gives more description of his childhood activities. Everything was new, lively, and full of joy and happiness. His carefree days were passing rapidly. Here we find a change in the tone of the poet. Time changes quickly. Childhood is the happiest period of human life, but it comes only for a short period and passes very quickly. In the sixth and last stanza, the poet says that he did not care anything during his childhood days. His childhood passed very rapidly. He visited the farm during his manhood, but he could not find his childhood feelings, freshness and happiness there. He missed his joy and fantasy. He realizes that his childhood days are gone forever. Now he faces the care, anxiety, duties and responsibilities of adult life. He lost his innocence, vitality and freshness. His life is restricted. Time was once in his favor, but it has gone against him. The poem can be divided into two parts. In the first part, the poet tells us about his childhood blessings. The first three stanzas are related to the poet's experience as a child when he used to spend his summer holidays at Fern Hill. The world of innocence, as described here, is like the Garden of Eden. The child is in complete union with nature. The world of fantasy offers the child an Edenic bliss, heavenly bliss. It is a timeless world without loss and decay. In the second part of the poem, we see transition from innocence to experience. The poet lost his childhood days and he entered into manhood, mature stage of his life. The last three stanzas are about the awakening in the child, which signifies the loss of the world of innocence. The poet refers to his changed situation in the world of experience. Journey from childhood to manhood. When manhood comes, people suffer from agony. We can see the tone of the poem changes dramatically from joy to lamentation as the poet loses his childhood simplicity and innocence. And we can see time passes very quickly and death is impending. Childhood is always fleeting. It goes away very quickly, and childhood is infinitely valuable because it comes only once in your life, and it is the best period of human life. We can't fully appreciate childhood until it is too late. As human beings get older, life gets harder and different from childhood. So here we can see the poet tells us about the innocence, simplicity of childhood period and draws a comparison between simple and innocent childhood period and the duties and responsibilities and burden of and restrictions of matured life or manhood. Before coming to an end, I would like to request all of you to stay at home and follow the rules of health to save yourself and your community from COVID-19 pandemic. This is all for today. Allah Hafiz.